Anime transformations are a mood. It's easy to see why they're popular enough to be in nearly every anime at some point, having characters transform to do the most mundane tasks. I've seen hundreds, maybe thousands of them since I started watching anime in the 90s, but somehow, they never get old. Because at the end of the day, they're glossy, sakuga-filled power fantasies. For shonen anime in particular, they're a great visual shorthand for a weak character finally getting swole, reaching a hard-won goal, or being able to protect themselves and those around them. Power-up transformations can grant a very specific type of wish fulfillment, where viewers can live vicariously through the OP chads and bad bitches of the anime world. But what about the ones that aren't about getting stronger? That's when things start to get weird. The transformations that aren't power fantasies tend to have layers of hidden meaning. The wish being fulfilled isn't always about physical strength or aggression. It's about sex. So here are 5 transformation types and what creators were really trying to say with them. Oh, and spoilers ahead. The Magical Boy. Sailor Moon probably features the most quintessentially girlish transformations I've ever seen. Characters come into power by first getting dolled up, implying the spectacle of a glow-up or an upgrade in appearance is just as, if not more important, than the power that may have come with it. When male characters change, their bodies tend to get idealized and swole with emphasis on strength or intimidation, while women get fetishized with emphasis on overexposure or titillation.
I'm the soldier of love, cutie honey!
So going out of one's way to look cute while kicking ass is something you'd assume mostly female characters would be all that concerned about? But here's a bold, innovative idea. Men like looking cute too, who'd have thunk it? Sure, sometimes this posh penis power can be used for comedic effect, like Koriwa Zombie's Sailor Moon but with necromancy and cross-dressing. But a surprising number of male transformations are about him becoming a more handsome, more charismatic, and more desirable version of his weeb-ass self. Cutie High Earth Defense Club is just Sailor Moon, but even more sexually charged with nudity and fan service. Star Driver's MC Takuto becomes the galactic pretty boy with a pop idol costume, highlights, and thigh highs of all things. And Spirit Pack's Kato gets to be an older, hotter version of himself to defend his boo. DNA Squared had its painfully shy MC turning into the mega pretty boy, a suave Stefan Urkel version of himself that can confidently hit on girls without getting so nervous he barfed. It works a little too well, and he leads to the overpopulation of the Earth. Skynet, Plan B, even sends a waifu back in time just to stop him. It was a weird show. Male transformations to specifically make him more sexually attractive got popular enough that anime could joke about doing the exact opposite. 2016's To Be Hero went a step further and based its entire premise around subverting this trope. The plot goes the shallow Hal route and robs the MC of his desirable playboy looks. His transformation actually sucks him down into a toilet, only to emerge later as a fatter, older, unpretty version of himself as penance. In this new round body, he defeats aliens while learning to be a better man and father for his daughter. The Full Monty. Getting a cool new outfit to kick ass in or play a children's card game is one thing, but getting nude to do the job? No, that's an idea I can really get behind. The fanservice fighter takes the handsome face trope in a different direction. They don't gain power by donning a more pleasing or synthetic veneer, but by literally stripping themselves bare and being as raw as possible. Full and partial nudity during battle is usually just a thinly veiled way to pander to mostly male viewers, so it's always a surprise when male characters get put on the objectification train too.
Put some clothes on.
Back in the day, fighters would lose their clothes during battle as if mandated by the state. Men getting butt booty naked to save the day is a hilarious trope of yesteryear that's slowly creeping its way back into modern anime. This is great and all, but the cynic in me kept thinking, how the f*** is this helping? Maybe Putty Putty Prisoner is onto something. Tachia's cheeks need to spiritually see the sun every time he really taps into his OP magical powers. The band from Bakumatsu Rock needs to let it hang just to be able to competently play Smoke on the Water. Kakushigoto's mangaka MC needs to be nude to unleash his inner pervert. The Ronin warriors already get standard power fantasy transformations, but in the final episode when they need to save their fearless leader from the strongest foe they've ever faced, they transform again. Their protective armor actually melts off and turns into colored light that barely covers them up. A lot of new transformations legit seem to precede their best feats of strength and prowess, but why? Male nudity is just fan service for girls, it doesn't mean anything, I can hear some of you say. Well, that's where you're wrong, buckaroo. Many shonen shows, all of these ultra-ripped, bare, bar bodies aren't aimed solely at women, if at all. Remember this one-shot baddie from Hamatora? His seduction powers only work on men. The Bakumatsu boys, they might be shonen, but they play for just as many screaming men as they do women. And one day, one look at this beefy Adonis MC of Kengan Ashura awoke his long-dormant sex drive after a 20-year dry spell. All of this brings me to the point that many of these male go-nude or go-home fighters actually fall somewhere on the LGBTQIA spectrum. Pandering and productivity aside, these transformations aren't about pleasing female viewers or female characters in the world of the show. They often reflect a desire not to have to hide anymore, and to be free of restraints or metaphorical confinement by literally and figuratively bearing one's soul by bearing it all. The gender bend is power through sexual identity. It can be that previous wish for desirability pushed a little further, where a character's ideal self may not be the gender they arrived with, plus a dash of freedom from expected binaries. That being said, people don't give classic anime enough credit, especially when it comes to the woke for the time normalization of gender fluidity in Ranma 1/2. Titular Ranma and his dad fall into enchanted pools, and Ranma is cursed, or blessed, to be turned into a blusty redheaded girl whenever he comes in contact with cold water. Body swap shenanigans are kind of the backbone of the entire show. Ranma doesn't exactly get stronger as a woman, but with Ranko's many outfits and lewd pinups, the show is very comfortable with how comfortable he is in his new skin. He even brags about his bigger assets to actual women in episode 1. And he's hit on by men so aggressively, his dad thinks to break off his original engagement to Akane and hook him up with a bisexual man. Yes, really.
I love you.
2019's Korean manhwa Bagel Girl is a gender bender about a plump sad boy that goes from simp to snack overnight. He wakes up one morning having shed the body nobody wanted to reveal one every man wanted, instead of, say, a hotter version of himself. This show's kinda all over the place, and you'd think this forever alone guy would want to finally get a girlfriend, but his priority was actually to be loved and coveted by everyone. He takes to being a girl instantaneously, and episode 2 is actually dedicated entirely to girl clothes and bra shopping, and not trying to figure out how the hell this could have happened in the first place. Even Shion waited until episode 3 before girl clothes shopping. Now I've already spoken at length about Kurogyaru, but TLDR, womanizing Shion gets cursed to transform into a girl to teach him a lesson. The only thing he learns is that he and his BFF Rui are pansexual. Women trying to be one of the boys would become a weirdly specific trend in the first half of 2021. Pretty boy detective clothes Mayumi comes to the all-boys club for help, but she's only allowed to be a recurring character and not a project by blending in with the boys later. Abandoning her femininity is the only way she gains a place to belong. I liked Mystery Monogatari, but something about that change for your man subplot is weirdly fucked up, especially since their leader cross-dresses all the damn time. Maze from the anime of the same name turns into a boy at sunset or whenever the plot demands it, but unlike Shion, in her new male body, she's legit a different person. She gets physically stronger, can pilot a mech and charm women, even if he is kind of a heel. But Girl Maze is still mentally present, and she gets put in the sunken place when she's not piloting her own meat suit. Sherlock Holmes, A Festive Sausage, has been a mostly male mystery anime in that sometimes a cigar is just a cigar sort of way. Never said that shit. That is until Femme Fatale Irene joined the chat. But even she frequently donned a male disguise for her missions. She gets a decent amount of screen time until she becomes a martyr for the murder gang's cause in only a few episodes. After they run her bullshit obituary, she re-emerges, transformed into James Bond of all people, literally burying her old life and her old female identity under this new, male, and far more marketable one. 28 Bond movies and counting. It's only now as Bond that Irene gets to be interesting, kick all the asses, and be something other than the hot, dangerous chick the anime pretends Sherlock is into, when he's clearly already spoken for. The show was determined to stay a sausage fest, even by metaphorically sewing a pair onto one of its only female characters. Though honestly, this isn't the first time anime's taken a well-known historical figure and transformed them into the gender the target audience would find more comfortable. Anyway, many stories where men are turned into women are low-key for gay or pansexual reasons. Whether or not it's the character's choice, they still always make the most of it. They go on fun adventures, they fight crime and catch bad guys, they get laid, or the transformation just becomes a casual part of their now more BL-friendly lives. But when women become men in anime, it's usually not for fun. The change is often not a choice, and more likely that the shows they're in wouldn't allow them to survive, stay, or even exist until they did. The puberty metaphor. The Puberty Power-up was especially popular in the 80s and 90s, but can definitely still be seen in more modern animation. These shows love to have their boyish MCs fall into awesome strength and an adult body at the same time. Take ecchi dark fantasy bastard for instance. Lucian, their preteen MC, spends all of his time with his future wife, but he's clearly still too young and awkward to really do anything with her. But as Dark Schneider, he can go from powerless cinnamon roll to oversexed demigod in an instant. Bastard has two flavors of preteen wish fulfillment rolled into one. Now he's old enough and confident enough to know what to do with his confusing feelings for Best Girl, effectively breezing right past the awkward phase of figuring that shit out in real time. 2017's L-Dive also does the teenage years speedrun. The first transformation was a super subtle metaphor for the MC's burgeoning libido. But because anime, the hot teacher he and the boys lusted after turns out to be a dangerous alien. So he defeats it with his new glowing prehensile penis. Yeah. Just let the cringe wash over you. And because anime doesn't do anything in half measures, MC's persistent boner pops up at inappropriate times, can actually talk to him, dispense life advice, and gets bigger later on. And his sentient schlong is not at all shy around men. Like I said, subtle. The MC even joins the full Monty Full Power Club by the final episode, when he has to save a cute but villainous husbando from himself. One of the most nakedly obvious metaphors for burgeoning adulthood and sexual exploration I've seen to date was from 2016's Luck and Logic. Everyone in the show comes into power by forging an intimate bond, and then merging into one powerful color-coded being by, you guessed it, making out. So you totally get why Olga is pissed that he's the only person not invited to the magic orgy. Just in case the sexual tension in the anime was too subtle, they even fight a succubus and an incubus in episode 3. Olga's actually never able to pair with any of the superpowered waifus in his orbit, but he does manage to bond with a guy. And not just any guy, but Lucifer, the most beautiful of God's fallen angels. Beelzebub's got game and comes whispering compliments and promises of power and revolution. Olga says yes, natch, and they form a wedding ceremony-like covenant of their own. Bit of a cop-out that they get something so chaste compared to everyone else, but the implication is still there. Olga finally comes into power and dons fetish gear when he bonds with, i.e. makes out with Lucifer. Teenagers, am I right?
It's about time.
They even kick things up when they overtrance, and the line between them blurs completely. Olga becomes Leather Twonk 2.0, and man, what a time to be alive. But as far as sexually charged transformations, it's hard to top Shuichi's metamorphosis in Gleipnir. It's deeply sexual, as are many of the anime's underlying themes in general. His mascot-style monster body is a perfect puberty metaphor as it's foisted on him in his teenage years against his will by a hormonal girl. Seems legit. The anime quickly makes it crystal clear that Shuichi isn't just a costume, but an orifice. He has some control over his new body, but he doesn't really become a strong, competent fighter until the sexually dominant woman wears him like a full-body fleshlight. For many viewers, this was the first time they'd even heard of the term pegging. Claire and Shuichi's sexual role reversal is far more intimate than traditional sex. It might be too soon to call them an item, but anyone other than Claire diving into his pussy is likened to cheating. Because this anime is a teen sex romp as seen through the eyes of H.R. Geiger. The Puberty Power-up isn't just for confused teens lacking experience, but a full-blown metaphor for actual sex. And in Zetman's case, Jin's second transformation occurs after what's very clearly a stand-in for assault. He only reaches this new form when a man who's been stalking him for a long time corners him in a dark alley. The bad man waits until he's too weak to fight back, and Jin gets pushed down, straddled, has his clothes torn off, and it very literally gets nailed without his consent. The dude even has the nerve to say, "Don't worry, you'll get used to it," after jamming something hard and phallic inside him. Happy as this is, this asshole and the anime justifies it by implying that this was a rite of passage. This violent sexual awakening is the next step on his road to completion, i.e. adulthood. The dramatic reveal. Different from the more superficial full Monty fighter, this transformation is more of a complete unveiling, even more than a mere physical change or a power buff. The character's old self is shattered. He finally stops holding back and becomes who or what he was meant to be all along. I know people crack jokes about Frieza screaming, "This isn't even my final form," decades before he played for the Lakers. But that's just his real body. And all the other forms were just him peeling off layers like an onion to keep his real strength hidden and under control. Not to mention that Frieza is just the OG gay-coded villain. Frieza is that bitch, and we love him for it. The characters from Pet look perfectly normal on the outside, but take on new and strange bodies inside the mindscape, where they mind-wipe, manipulate, or kill their targets at the behest of powerful Yakuza. Hiroki becomes a goldfish, reflecting his easygoing nature and willingness to, well, be a pet, owned completely by Tsukasa. And Tsukasa's watery body perfectly reflects his malleable morals and ever-shifting nature. Hito's transformation in Darling in the Franxx is the direct result of his relationship with Zero 2. Just being with her gradually turns him into a Klaxosaur hybrid like his waifu. Being more like her and one with her is all he ever wanted out of life, horns and all. I know a lot of people thought this ending was a bit bad, but I thought it was super sweet. Kill la Kill is infamous for its sexualized transformations, but not as much as this dude. And I wouldn't say Gamagori's multiple transformations are dramatic exactly, but they're clearly brought on by his extreme and hyper-sexualized masochism.
Yes! More! Punish me!
He literally has to be beaten to climax in order to fully transform, even going so far as to beat himself when Ryuko catches on. And where would this section be without mentioning everyone's favorite dark fantasy epic Berserk? Guts certainly goes through visceral changes of his own, but I want to focus on Griffith because there's a lot going on with him. Every step of Griffith's multiple transformations are accompanied by sex. Let me explain. Oh, and trigger warning for some unsavory shit coming up. Transformation 1 is after Griffith wastes away in a dungeon after being tortured and raped by this walking pustule for about a year before his rescue.
Why, we've been inseparable this past year, like husband and wife. But this is the...
The only reason Griffith's even down there in the first place is because he deflowered Princess Charlotte. Transformation 2, during the eclipse, he becomes Femto, and his first act as a new god is to do unspeakable things to Casca. And the resulting half-formed fetus from that unholy union is the base for his new humanish body as Neo Griffith. Now I put Griffith here instead of in the previous sections because he's already an adult with agency and sexual experience, and frankly, he was already hot. So his wish fulfillment wouldn't call for any of that. Femto and Neo Griffith are two very different looks that represent the same thing, Griffith's dual nature. Femto is what Griffith became because Guts left, and the city planning comptroller Neo Griffith is who he would have been if Guts had stayed. So Pet's kinky BDSM brain bond, Hito driving that ass like a jeep, and Griffith becoming a lipstick-wearing leather daddy are all cases where the character's transformation reveals who they really are at the core of their being through quasi-sexual situation, and not because they were just chasing power. Now you might be wondering how the hell it took so long, but I wasn't quite sure where to put the magical beefcake show of Fairy Ranmaru. They managed to hit every single transformation trope I've mentioned. They're about wanting to be desirable, sexually empowered, gender fluid, while being a literal reveal of who they are outside of their human disguises. If I were making a transformation tier list video, Fairy Ranmaru would be S tier, because it's around the many nipple and crotch shots where I realized anime just gets me, you know? So which transformation was your favorite? Feel free to tell me and others about it in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss out on more weird ass videos like this one. Bye for now.